Fun fact, this video should have been out nearly 3 freaking years ago. But here we are, gathered today to talk about one unique Crash Bandicoot title, and that is Crash Twinsanity. From the get-go, you already know the main villain, Cortex, is up to no good. He pretends to dress up as our sister Coco, and lures us through a tutorial of how to play the game, only for us to be led right into a nasty, death-trappy arena with all of Crash's villains from some previous games. Shocking, I know, right? With unleashing a giant mecha bandicoot machine, Cortex plans fail, while Crash and Cortex stumble through nothing but cavern catastrophe! Ow! Ooh! Ooh! Ow! Ow! And suddenly are invaded by alien ants? The two manage to disrupt a native tribe territory, and while saving Cortex's butt like the absolute Chad that Crash is,
I'm an evil scientist, what do you expect? This isn't a game.
two insanely intelligent bird-like twins confront Crash and Cortex, threatening Insanity Island and the universe altogether, leaving Crash and Cortex, longtime rivals, to finally band together to save the day. The game will have the player traveling through like open-ended islands, allowing for exploration and item collecting and progression, from Insanity Island to the Iceberg Lab to the Academy of Evil. There's some fun to be had roaming around in these islands and locations as Crash and Cortex. The game features the two teaming up, while oftentimes both characters through set pieces, obstacles, and either swapping between playing either one of the two. There is also a third character named Nina Cortex, with these cool extended metal arms and hard rock fists that can let her grapple around and punch enemies from afar. Meanwhile, the game features a decent portion of areas that reside within the open-ended islands that Twinsanity provides. Most of the time you'll move through the game in a linear fashion, which comes with enemies and bosses and gimmicks to follow through. Bosses are okay, but there's something that irked the mess out of me. When I finished the Tiki boss fight, once you defeat them and wait until Cortex teleports in the direction that you need to go, the same Tiki boss fight that you managed to defeat has the ability to damage you still. What if I wanted to do like the infamous Crash dance or give them a little pat on the back for bravery, huh? No. The game kills you for even touching the dead Tiki boss, and you have to replay the boss fight from the beginning. If this same situation happens with just the Tiki boss alone, I'm going to assume that the other boss fights would do the same if they were set up this way. Don't get me started with those poor checkpoint timings. Those checkpoints are so bad. Bosses usually do their best to take full effect with utilizing Crash and Cortex as a pair, whether that's just using Cortex to toss them to areas at the right moments, or maybe just Crash and Cortex begin fighting their very own bosses by themselves. But the game does whatever job it hopes to do in making sure each one feels different. But most of the boss fights feel pretty mediocre, I'm not going to lie. But the soundtrack makes up for it. The music in Twinsanity is so good. It's comprised of nothing more than a cappella from the group known as Spiral Mouth. So take a quick listen to some of the soundtracks. Now, something that I want to discuss was how Crash Twinsanity has an insanely poor story that feels super unimportant to the game, along with so many unanswered plot holes and looming questions. For instance, why is this treasure so important? Why are all the villains from the beginning of the game barely present within the story at all? Why are the Twinsanity duo barely in the game as often as you'd think they'd be? Why did Cortex refer to Nina as his daughter?
My daughter, niece! We must do something! Think, Cortex, think!
Why the hell is Spyro in the treasure room, and how did he find out? There's almost no consistency with any of these whatsoever, let alone the most story you'll get out of Twinsanity is simply coming to the realization that Cortex had 2 pet birds and created a science experiment that sent them both to the 10th dimension. Then he forgot and carried on with his life after that. It doesn't make it any better that they're vague about why they enacted revenge on Cortex in the first place to begin with, and then they throw this weak reveal as to why they were hunting Cortex in the first place. So do you want to know how this ends? Cause I do. Simple. You travel to the 10th dimension, or Insanity Island. Cortex is chased by evil Crash. You then find the main base of Insanity Duo's operations and go through 3 phase boss fights that include Nina Cortex, having Cortex himself, Crash, all in that same order. And not only that, but you finish the Insanity Duo with the Mecha Bandicoot suit and lock them away with evil Crash at the end and keeping them maintained and occupied. And just when you thought that Cortex had a change of heart, well...
About you. Your creation was a mistake, and your existence has been a constant reminder of that mistake. But you can bury them! I never want to see your ridiculous face again!
The game definitely feels rushed. It has no room to talk about being a complete product, especially when the game took slight shots at itself. For one,
Well, the past few years have kind of been slow. Wrath of Cortex didn't do as well as we'd hoped, and... Fish?
and two,
A new dimension! It should have been 2 new dimensions, but we ran out of time.
I decided to take the liberty of checking out and researching more on Twinsanity, and according to the Crash fandom, Crash Twinsanity originally came close to the plot of the first Ratchet & Clank video game, meaning the game would later be scrapped so far into development with no extended time frame to release it. The game was supposed to include the cut levels in the game, such as Gonna Bit Coco, Rehab Lab, Security Insanity, along with a hoverboard level and a Train Express level as well. Coco was even mentioned to have been another playable character with more to the game than being completely brain dead like she was back at the Iceberg Lab. This would have been so cool. Also, there was even supposed to be more of an explanation as to how some of the villains actually found the treasure room to begin with too. I love Crash Twinsanity, and it feels super different than the previous titles in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. This game was never fully realized to its entire potential, with having to make major cuts to the game and still having to meet a very time-constraining deadline that was right around the corner after the reset of development. All I could ever hope or ask for is that we see some sort of Twinsanity remake in the future. But until that day comes, Twinsanity will be a Crash Bandicoot title that I love, even if it frustrates me at times, and even if the game isn't complete. It still has a place in my heart, but I guess that's all that matters. Right?
Hey! Yeah, you! I've been doing this for 10 stinking years! Back and forward, and I'm sick of it! Well, I'm not gonna do it no more!